Thank you, Mohit. First time in my life, I have received a standing ovation, that too, before I have presented anything. So I must say that it has been a great boost, not to my morale, to my vanity itself. So I must say that the rest of my life is made with the kind of introduction that you have given and with the kind of response that the rest of the Toastmasters have given. Thank you very much. So you see, it's very easy for me to incorporate the theme and the word of the day into my session. I remain grateful, ever grateful. Of course, I should not forget the president of your club, Abhijit, whose DP is quite different from what he is right now with the beard. But of course, with or without the beard, Abhijit is a handsome character. So very happy to get his contact. And I must say that I am truly grateful to Subramanya for recommending me to be an educationist in your club. Thank you, DTM Girish, for that speech. I won't say much because you are yet to be evaluated. So your evaluator will not be happy if I were to speak on your speech, except to say that if people are not happy with my education session, they will go back happy because your speech itself was an education session. So I'm at ease, completely at ease right now to begin my session. I must say that I'm happy because, as a couple of people have already mentioned, on a Sunday morning to attend a Toastmasters meeting, that too at 9, is a sign of your commitment. I always remember Toastmaster Chendil saying that all of us are ATMs. He says that all of us are ATMs because we are addicted to Toastmasters. But I must say that I know that Girish is a DTM. I am a DTM. Subramanya, who suggested my name, is a DTM. There might be more DTMs here, I'm not sure. But according to me, all of us are DTMs because we are dedicated Toastmasters. We are devoted to this movement called Toastmasters. So I'm very happy to be with all the DTMs of this particular club. And I'm very happy that my own member, Dr. Sophie, has joined us. Now, Abhijit has given me 30 minutes for presentation and 10 minutes for Q&A. I hope all of you are aware of this. Otherwise, you might be in for a shock that I'm given 40 minutes on the whole. I hope I haven't shocked any one of you. Abhijit, since you are also the timer and you are the one who gave me 30 minutes, I request you to show the flags at 25, 27 and 30. That is for my presentation. So now let me share my screen and share with you what exactly are my ideas of evaluation. Of course, I have given this particular title to begin. It's not at all difficult to interpret this, but then you might wonder as to why I have given this title to a session on evaluation. So any takers to answer this question, why do you think I have given this particular title to a session on evaluation? You can unmute yourself and you can give the answer. Any answer? And I also like the way you wanted the video of everybody to be the camera. I was corrected once by a Toastmaster that you can't say video on, you must say camera on. Okay, so I stand corrected. Aparna, please ensure that I've already corrected myself. All right. Okay. Any answer from any one of you as to why I have called this particular session to begin?
Yeah, I would like to contribute here.
Samir?
It's very easy to talk about let's begin or start something, but it is very hard to actually start or begin that. That's why to begin, someone has to begin.
Good. Anyone else? Okay. Now, always in these questions, all answers are right because there is what is called multiplicity of view, but then there is one answer in the mind of the resource person. So I'll give you a clue as to what that answer is in my mind. Okay, let's see whether you can. Now, this is my clue for the answer that I'm trying to get from you, even as I say that Samir's answer is actually a meaningful answer. Any takers for this Q? No? All right. He is a famous poet from the Romantic age, Wordsworth. Now, I know that you haven't named your club after the Romantic poet Wordsworth because you have split Wordsworth into two and you have said Wordsworth. And I like it because if you were to call yourself Wordsworth Toastmasters, maybe it would reek of colonial hangover. No, you aren't doing that. You have split Wordsworth into two. He might be actually uncomfortable in his grave, but doesn't matter. We are comfortable with this particular phrase, Wordsworth. And when you split, what is it that you have done? Any takers for this? You have split, but when you read, Wordsworth remains Wordsworth, right? Only when you pronounce it, Wordsworth remains Wordsworth, but when you read, he is split into two. So what is it that you're doing when you split Wordsworth into two? Any takers for this? Okay, quickly, otherwise Abhijit will time me even before I finish my session. All right. Now, what you have done is you have punned upon the name Wordsworth by splitting it into two. And that's actually a clever strategy that you can use even in your speech and evaluation. All right. That is the way we use words. Now, I begin my evaluation session with this particular input on how is it that we use words, because one of the oft-asked questions is whether we need to be prepared as evaluators. This is an oft-asked question. Do we need to prepare ourselves or do we have to be spontaneous? Now, I say yes and no for this question on preparation because, as I've already said, to a certain extent, especially when it comes to words, you can be prepared. Now, why do I say that when it comes to words, you can be prepared? Now, at 3 parts in your speech, you use words. Now, first time is, okay, this is what Benjamin Franklin has to say: by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail, and none of us would want to be failures. So let's see in what manner we can prepare ourselves with words. Now, going back to the point that at 3 points in your evaluation, words can be of great help to you. The first point is, the first stage rather, is when you talk positively about the speech. Now, one of the most oft-used, misused, abused words is awesome. Now, there is actually a TED talk on this particular word awesome, because I have seen that with the youngsters, this is the favorite word. Everything is awesome for us, beginning with the birth of a child to the wrinkles of an old man. It's awesome. Now, awesome. Now, why do I object to this particular word? I don't mean to say that you should not use it at all, but you run a great risk when you use this particular word, awesome. Any takers for this as to what could be my objection to this particular word? Any takers? Yes, Mohit.
Awesome, when we call something as awesome or a speech as awesome, means it was flawless, it was fabulous, nothing was missing in that. But if I'm evaluating, I am supposed to give a constructive feedback, and there's always a room of improvement. So to begin with, as an evaluator, I cannot say it was an awesome speech, because the moment I say awesome, it's done. No further evaluations required. It's perfect in all sense, which is never the case. So that's
very good. Yes, the explanation has fitted my idea to a T. Thank you very much for that. And as Mohita said, awesome is a superlative. Now, if you use a superlative, where do you have the scope at all to give your constructive criticism? So let's avoid superlatives. Now, moving on, the second point where we can use words powerfully is when we come on to the constructive recommendations that we give. Now, I have heard umpteen number of speakers use this particular phrase. Now, let me come to a few recommendations, suggestions, which will take your speech to the next level. Now, what is my problem with this next level business? Can anyone attempt an answer? Again, Mohit? No, Mohit came on camera. Okay, he's still muted. Any answer? All right. Now you see, Mohit said awesome is a superlative. Likewise, next level right now is what we call a cliche or a platitude. Now, why do I say it's a cliche or a platitude? First time when an evaluator came up with this particular line, let me have a few recommendations that would take you to the next level. I'm sure that all of us sat up and listened to that evaluator with a lot of interest. What a fine way of expressing the area of recommendation would have been the thought that came to our mind. But then, now we are in such a world that even before a word is out of our mouth, it has already been used by too many people, because we are in a globalized world now, and we network. And now with Zoom, I think it is even worse. So whatever we have to say has already been said by others. So it becomes a cliche, it becomes a platitude. Now, first time when Robert Burns said, "My love is like a red, red rose," of course, everybody would have felt excited, exhilarated over this particular phrase. But now, if a boy walks up to a girl and says, "My love is like a red, red rose," it's become a cliche. Of course, first time the metaphor would have brought the imagination of the rose being multi-petaled, fragrant, vibrant, etc., etc. But when it is used too many times, it loses its charm. So whatever is a cliche, we must avoid. Now, the third area is when we come to the last part of a speech. I have come across this particular phrase, all in all, a good speech. Now, all in all is not grammatically wrong. All in all is not syntactically wrong. But again, so many times we have used this particular phrase, all in all, a good speech, that it has lost its charm altogether. And it is also a kind of, like you are summarizing the whole thing without really giving equal weightage, equal thought to what the speaker has said. Now, it's not at all difficult to think of many words and phrases that would come to our help. Now, instead of saying an awesome speech, you have a whole lot of words that you can use, which will not be superlatives, but which will be complimentary enough for the speaker to get encouraged. Now, even when it comes to giving the summation, you have a number of choices, and you don't need to be a genius to know these words, because you have your thesaurus to help you out. But then the transitional marker is not very easy. Transitional marker, that's the mid thing that the middle column, the transitional marker needs a lot of imagination. Now, let me tell you that the first two were used by me at the district level, at the division level, and at the district level for transitional marker. And I could literally see a smile on the face of many among the audience when I used this particular transitional marker, because it was different from other transitional markers. So this is where we need to be imaginative, and this is where we can think of ways and means with which we can employ words powerfully. Of course, even if you Google, this says 50 ways in which you can say conclusion. So even if you Google, you will get that. Now, having said this much, let me also say there is one more area where you can be prepared. That is the power of three. Now, psychologists have come up with the idea that when you put things in the cluster of three, it's going to sink in a better manner, and the audience will remember what you say. When you say the audience, of course, the judges also, Toastmasters, if it is at the club level where the voting is done, judges, if it is a contest. Now, whenever you see words in clusters of three, it's the power of three. And that is going to make your evaluation more impactful. So you can be prepared even in this particular manner when it comes to words. But then there is a word of caution here. For example, now this is an example of power of three. You spoke with conviction, compassion, and compulsion. Okay, you're using the power of three and you're also making it alliterative by beginning everything with the CO. So it makes even the sound impactful. But then there is a problem. It shows very clearly when you come up only with this that it is 100% preparation. There is nothing spontaneous about this particular phrase that you might use. So what I'm trying to say is that even as you say that, yes, you can be prepared, do you have the ability to give it the aura of spontaneity? For example, even if you have the power of three, can you move on and elaborate on that and connect it to the speech so that it doesn't come out as something that you have kept as a ready-made template? So one more example of power of three, you spoke with ease, elan, and effervescence, again alliterative, but again, you have to connect it to the speech, but that is not difficult at all. If you have one or two such expressions, it's not at all difficult to connect it to the speech presented by the speaker. Now, there is one more area where preparation is necessary, and again, I say that there is both, this is both right and wrong. For example, analogy. Now, I have come across people using analogies, especially in contests. Now, of course, analogies are interesting. And I myself agree that one good analogy is worth 3 hours discussion. I agree with this particular quote. But again, there are problems associated with analogies. We had one particular contest where evaluator number 3 started the evaluation and had the analogy of the chocolate, you know, crispy, nutty, dark chocolate, light chocolate. It went on and on and on. It was interesting. We listened to that evaluator, but then came the 5th evaluator, again with the analogy of chocolate. Now, why did it happen? It happened because the analogy was not an original analogy. The analogy was a Google analogy. Now, supposing I say I want to be original, so I'm going to use the analogy of masala dosa. Okay, your speech was like a masala dosa. It was crisp from the outer appearance of it, and when we opened, it had delicious bhaji chutney. Well, I do not really know how interesting or impactful such an analogy would be. It would cater to the interest of only one particular set of audience, because for another set of audience, this might sound a little silly, trivial. Likewise, I had one particular evaluator using the analogy of mangoes, different types of mangoes, juicy like Mundappa mango and colorful like Neelam, and etc. etc. Now, in all these things, even if you're original, you run the risk of being flippant, trivial, silly. So what is it that we can keep in mind when we come up with analogies? Now, my answer to this is that as far as you are topical, you connect it to the place, you connect it to the time, your analogies can be effective. For example, in my winning evaluation, since it was in Cochin, Kerala, when I referred to the speech of the speaker, I used the art forms of Kerala. I said your speech had the serenity of the Mohiniyattam dancer, it had the vigor of the Kalariyapattu fighter, and it had the vivacity of the boat race, something of that kind. I connected it to the place. And you see, immediately it appealed to the audience, because we had a host from Kerala. So the hosts were happy, and even the guests who had come to Kerala were happy that the regional analogy was used. So analogies can be used only when you have the assurance that these analogies are original and interesting. Now, if it is at the club level, I say never, never lose sight of it. Now, can you tell me what is it that I have in my mind when I say lose sight of it? if you feel the question is too vague, let me give a clue. Now, this is your clue. Now, looking at this, you can try and answer what is it that we should never lose sight of when we are evaluators at the club level evaluations. Any idea? I hope people, yes, Samir?
Maybe it's not just we are focusing only the speaker, but to keep in mind the overall ambience and all the other audience, what kind of taste and or some, for example, the age factor or the something like the
Yes,
nearby.
but I'm talking right now about the club speeches and evaluations. I'm not talking about contest. If it is at the club level, I say we should never lose sight of it, and this is my cue to you. Okay, now why are we here is a question about the purpose of our life, right? That was my cue, because at the club level, when you evaluate, you should never ever lose sight of the purpose of the speech. For example, Girish's speech today was a research-based speech. Now, his speech was filled with research. We had absolutely no doubt about it. But supposing Girish had made a very interesting speech, but did not have enough research, the evaluator's duty is to point that out. So whatever is the purpose statement at the club level should never be overlooked, and the evaluator, while giving the purpose statement, must make it very clear to the audience, because you see it is going to have an impact on voting also. Now, having said this much, let me now say that even if you are going to be prepared with words and phrases, even if you are going to be prepared with the purpose statement, when you actually sit and listen to a speaker, you should be like this. What is this? What is this? Any idea? Yes, Mohit?
Taking notes.
Hmm?
Taking notes, capturing
Okay.
the important points that he or she is mentioning.
Correct, correct. You're very close to it.
Is it
Actually,
open mind, ma'am?
correct.
Is it open mind?
Yes. Open mind. Yes. Del PC something I can't make out the name.
Bindia. I'm Bindia here.
Okay. Yes. Correct. Right. Both of you are right. Now, this is actually an image of an empty slate that you
Empty
get
slate.
when you type out the phrase tabula rasa. Now, tabula rasa is a Latin phrase which means an empty slate. Now, tabula rasa is a concept that says that all of us human beings come into existence without any preset mental ideas, but our experiences, our perceptions give us ideas, our experiences give us ideas. So before we come into existence, our mind is like an empty slate, and that is what is meant by the phrase tabula rasa. Now I'm extrapolating this to a speech, and I'm saying that when you sit as an evaluator, even if you have prepared yourself with words and phrases, and even if you know what is going to be the purpose of the speech, now as Mohit said, when you sit down to take down points, and as the year did you say?
Bindia, ma'am.
Bindia, yes. Can you have that openness so that impressions just fall on your mind and do not have any preconceived ideas? Now, why do I say this? Why do I say that we have to sit with an empty mind? If we do not, we lose out on what Zanden, who is the CEO of Quantified Communication, says about vitals. Now, you see, all of us know about Mehrabian model, about how we say things is more important than what we say about the body language, etc., etc. The 3 V's, all of us know about that. But Zanden, the CEO of Quantified Communications, comes up with another, the 4th V, which he calls vitals. And he says it is the authenticity. Now, I feel if we sit with too many ideas already troubling our mind, even as we sit and listen to a speaker, we will miss out on what Zandon calls authenticity. And if we do not have this authenticity or vitals, the fourth V, we will utterly fail as evaluators, because our speaker, we might be able to fool some people sometime, all people sometime, but we will not be able to fool all at all times. So if we do not have this authenticity, we are going to fail as evaluators. Now this I say, now Mohit referred to note making. Now I'm not going to take a class on origami here, but I've seen in contests, when I have organized contests or when I have competed in contests, I've seen my fellow contestants, having different ways of holding the sheet and all that, because they want to put down points in different parts of the sheet, etc., etc. I have no quarrels with this. It's a choice made by an individual. But as far as my experience goes, I feel, as Mohit said, the point that, and as Divya said, openness, just put down points in two categories. Points that impress you, points that fail to impress you. That's all you're going to do at that particular point of time. And that gives you the advantage of some kind of mind mapping that you can use when you actually start your evaluation. So you have to come with an empty mind and then put down points even as the speaker speaks. Now, what could be your focus as an evaluator after you put down your points, when you look at your points and when you want to structure your evaluation? Of course, the topic selection is important. Now, you can make a point of saying whether the topic was self-centered, audience-centered, subject-centered, as you can see, like the Venn diagram. Now, if it is self-centered, this is what a speaker would like to speak on. Audience-centered is what the audience would like to listen to. Subject-centered is whether the speaker has the expertise to speak on that particular topic. For example, I'm interested in Bharatanatyam. So I speak on Bharatanatyam. Would my audience be interested in Bharatanatyam? Not necessary at all. But because I belong to a Toastmasters organization, which has the vision of communication, if I say how this art form of India is a great communicator because it teaches us the proper posture, and through its mudras, it teaches us proper gesture, then I am connecting this art form, which I'm interested in, to Toastmasters' vision and mission. And with that, I ensure that my audience would be happy. And if it's not necessary that I'm a guru, a Vidwan or Vidushi of Bharatanatyam, but even if I'm an aficionado of Bharatanatyam, I think I have the right, because it becomes subject-centered. So as an evaluator, you can see whether the speaker took trouble to choose a topic that fell into this intersection of the Venn diagram. Now, next, the structure. Just as a speech has the structure, we know that evaluation also has the structure. But in that structure, when you listen to the speaker, what is it that you keep in mind? I'm not talking about the structure of evaluation. I'm talking about whether we have noted down the structure of the speaker. For example, we have something called serial position effect, which talks about primacy effect, recency effect. Now, of course, there is a difference of opinion. Now, some say that primacy effect, what is said right at the beginning, is going to catch the attention. Some say that it is the recency effect, what is said right at the end, that would catch the attention of the audience. But then, there is no consensus on this. Some say that. Now, as an evaluator, you can keep your mind open to see whether the speech had the primacy effect. If it had, how did the speaker achieve it? Did the speaker achieve it by throwing a question at the audience, by using an anecdote or a quote, or by giving a meaningful pause? What is it that the speaker used for this primacy effect is going to be the concern of the evaluator. Likewise, recency effect. Also, the structure of the speech. Of course, Aristotle came up with this particular structure, but Freytag, a German writer, later on came up with the same idea. This is the speech structure. Whether the speaker had this particular speech structure is also one of the points to be borne in mind as an evaluator. The objective of the speech, of course, is very important. Was the speech educative? Did the speaker exhort the audience with a message, or did the speaker try to entertain the audience? Did the speaker manage to do all three, or did the speaker manage to do one of these at least? Because it's not necessary that a speaker does everything. But when it comes to entertain, it doesn't mean just being humorous. Entertain means keeping the audience engrossed. So as speakers, we should have the ability to entertain, that is, to get the attention of the audience. Now, there is always a question about taking excerpts from the speech, whether the evaluator can take excerpts from the speech. Again, the answer is yes and no. Excerpts can be taken, but in what way is the question. Now, when we take excerpts, it should be to review and not to replicate, not to repeat what the speaker has said. And when we repeat, some of us as evaluators make the mistake of mimicking the speaker, saying it as the speaker has said. We think it is complimentary, but it might not come out as complimentary to the speaker, because when you mimic, you might not be a good mimic at all. So your mimicking may not be complimentary to the speaker. But then, if you say the first sentence, it is just reproducing, replicating. You are not adding anything, and that kind of reproduction of excerpts from the speech is not advisable. But the second sentence shows that you are taking excerpts from the speech, but while taking excerpts from the speech, you have a point to make. So that is what we have to focus on if we want to take some points from the speech. Of course, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Now, these are the things that we have to keep in mind as evaluators, and it goes without saying that all of us know that these are the things that should be given importance. Now, let me move on to the famous sandwich method, which every person taking a session on evaluation talks about. And we also think, yes, sandwich method. Yes, a good method. I have no quarrels at all with that. But then, when we employ, how do we employ this so-called sandwich method is the question. Now you see, sometimes a sandwich is like this. Our introduction is so long that even after the green flag and the amber flag has gone up, we forget to move on to recommendations. So we are with the introduction. We are saying, you said this, you did that, you were this, you were that. And we have never come on to our, now if we leave ourselves with say 30 seconds or even just 1 minute for recommendations and summation, we are not going to do justice to the sandwich method at all. A sandwich does not, so it will be like this, poor man's sandwich with very little filling in it. Now, how is it when you have a sandwich of burger rather of this kind? Now, why do I say this? Of late, please believe me, Toastmasters, of late, I have seen this kind of sandwich more often than the sandwich that I'm looking for. What do I mean by this? You know, yes, Mohit, very good. I'm happy to, to cut the monotony of my own voice. Yes.
No, it's not monotonous. It's very, very, educative. But to this, it looks to me a burger which is not at all edible. It's too much of information, too much of evaluation, and too much of thoughts being passed, which is not easy for anyone to digest. So it has to be a balance of what you fill between the breads when you prepare a sandwich. I think that's what you're trying to relate to in the real time.
One addition to that, when you say too much information, too many things and all that, my point there is that what I have seen of late, I repeat myself, is that I've seen it with many evaluators. First 30 seconds, the speech was impressive. The speech had good gestures, facial expression. But that but comes too soon. It is as though we are too willing to give suggestions, recommendations, as though we are, Solomons and Sophocles and Sarvajñas here. And we have to tell our speaker how to improve. I have seen that trend. So that is trending, I can say. Now, I object to this. I remember Deepak Justin's session, which I attended. One of the Bangalore Toastmasters had organized this. I can't remember which Toastmaster club organized, but Deepak Justin was the educationist there. Now he said, you needn't whitewash, but please don't blackwash, he said. I liked that description that he used. You needn't whitewash. You needn't unnecessarily come up with, praises, but do not blackwash either. This is what he said. I feel that he was 100% right in what he said about blackwash, because as I said, I see this happening now. I do not know why, but we seem to have grown more and more tolerant towards weaknesses of a speaker, and we seem to have grown more and more enthusiastic about giving suggestions, forgetting that when we give such suggestions, we ourselves aren't model evaluators. We forget that very often. So let me say that it is not easy to come up with the perfect burger of this kind, veg or non-veg. I am a vegetarian. It's not at all easy to come up with the perfect burger of this kind. And there are many things that we have to bear in mind. Now, especially transition. Now, when it comes to transition, make it a clear-cut transition. If you have finished speaking about the strengths of the speech, and when you move over to the weaknesses of the speech, make it very clear. Now here I have seen sometimes two types of error. One is that in the first part of the speech, you say your body language was fabulous. And in the second part of the speech, you say, when you moved and when you used your gestures, they did not seem to be emphatic enough. Now, what do you mean? In the first part, you say your body language was fabulous. In the second part, you say the same thing needs improvement. Is it a complete mistake? No. It's not a complete mistake, provided you qualify the suggestion that you make. In the first part, yes, you have praised a speaker for the body language. Maybe that speaker had above average body language. But in the second part, yes, you have your right to talk about body language, but show to your listeners that you have not forgotten what you have said in the first part. So say that, having said that your body language is impactful, let me give a small suggestion in the same area, because I found that when you spoke, you were not a palm-up speaker. You tended to have your palms down. So can you just keep in mind when you speak next that you are a palm-up speaker, because a palm-up speaker comes out as a more encouraging speaker. So what I'm trying to say is that the same area can come in the next part, but you have to make it very clear as to why you have taken the same area again in the next part. That is one point that I want to make. Another point is, I have been a victim of this, as Shakespeare says, more sinned upon than sinning. So I have been sinned upon in this manner quite often. That is, you had a very good way of expressing yourself, but you are monotonous in your expression. Your body language was good, but you had too many movements. Your facial expressions were good, but sometimes they were too emphatic. One positive followed by one negative with that but. Now, not at all pleasant. Finally, the speaker ends up in total confusion, whether it is a strength or a weakness in his or her speech. So do not mix up praise with recommendation. Have a clear-cut segment. And when you have praise, make it praise, specifically praise. And when you move on to recommendations, make it recommendations, specific recommendations. So that is what I have to say about transition. And it's a very important point, because you see, evaluation is the most dangerous area of the different aspects of Toastmasters speech making, public speaking, because you are dealing with another person. Okay, now when you speak, okay, no problem. Table topic, you say whatever you want to say, no problem. But when you evaluate another, and that is a slippery slope. And we have to be doubly careful when it comes to this particular aspect, and avoid B word. I've already told you but too many times. Use it cautiously. Should too many times. Must too many times. Don't use this prescriptive language. Sometimes you may have too many suggestions to make. You can even give it with a touch of humor. Touch of humor is of utmost use when it comes to recommendations. Instead of giving one tight, a rigid recommendation in a very serious manner, moralizing, prescriptive manner, if you bring in slight humor, that would help. And if you want to avoid should, must, you can even put it in the form of a question. Can we expect you to? So, shall we, in the next speech, expect this from you? It makes a question, makes it more tentative instead of should, must, and generalizations. You never, always and never are two words of generalization, which as evaluators we must never use. Even if the speaker is guilty of it, let's wink over it. It's not that with one evaluation that you offer to the speaker is going to be a miraculous speaker next time. You're only helping that speaker to improve to some extent. So avoid all these things which may hurt the speaker and which may never give enough boost to the morale of the speaker to come back and attempt speaking again. I don't know, Abhijit, have I crossed the time? Oh, now I see Abhijit. I never saw Abhijit all this time. How is that?
Ma'am, yeah, I was showing background. I think yeah, we are at 40 minutes, ma'am.
Oh God. Okay, then I will end here with one quiz question. How is that? I didn't pin you. I should have pinned you, I think. I thought you would come on screen and I would see you, I thought. I'm very sorry.
Okay, no issues, ma'am.
All right. Okay, I will end with this, with one question. In this is my last one. There is no time for question answer. I'm sorry about it. You can you can send your questions personally to me. Now, in this, you just tell me which is the right sentence, why. Just 1 minute, Abhijit. I'll end with this. Any answer?
Take your time, no problems at all.
What is it?
Sorry.
I said take your time, no problems. We are all enjoying it.
Thank you, Girish, for that, Philip. But then I'll end with this, because I'm one of those few teachers who do not continue after the bell rings. And I'm one of those very few teachers who conclude before the bell rings. So I should not break that rule in your club, which I've already broken anyway. Any answer for this?
First one, we would prefer win-win.
First one is?
It's a win-win situation. So I don't know.
Correct. Yes, right. The first one is right. Now, the second one is wrong, because whenever there is a blame, we put the first person at the beginning. Though grammatically we say first person should never come at the beginning, it should come later. Grammatically, syntactically we say that. But if there is something that we have to own up as a mistake, the first person should come at the beginning. What is it that I'm trying to say? I'm only trying to say that when you evaluate, have what is called you attitude. Think of how it comes. Do unto others what you want others to do unto you. With this, I come to the end. Now, Abhijit, if I've taken a little more time, now let me put it this way. Now, when it is 2 to 3 minutes, 30 extra seconds, right? When it is 40 minutes, how many more seconds I should get? to say that I still remain qualified. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you. Thank you.